Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. About a year or two ago, we talked about Batman jazz. It was stupid. Basically, Batman accidentally discovers that a made-up jazz legend responsible for modern jazz, who supposedly died years ago, is alive and well and performing in nightclubs. Oh, and he visits said nightclub in full Batman regalia because he's kind of an idiot. And then he and the jazz legend are attacked by whatever the hell these things are. Oh, and this is also the same writer who brought us Punk is Nothing But Death and Crime and the Rage of the Beast, aka Batman's lifelong quest to rid the world of rock music. And I already love it more than most comics I review because they wisely kept this to 3 issues instead of stretching it out to unbearable lengths like Sci-Spy or Kamani at Earth's End or All-Star Batman and Robin. It's been suggested that the jazz legend, named Bluebird, is likely a stand-in for the real-life influential jazz player Charles Bird Parker. He helped create bebop and died in the mid-1950s. So let's dig into Batman Jazz number 2 and see if we can figure out if this series actually has a reason for existing. The cover is okay, if a little weird. We have Batman, or possibly Black Panther since we can't see his mouth, falling down towards that bald guy from Last Action Hero who happens to be wielding a machine gun. And behind them is a vague drawing of a guy playing a saxophone. And then the same image of a guy playing a saxophone, only put through a Photoshop filter. Must be a jazz thing. We open where we left off last time, with Batman being repeatedly eviscerated by shards of glass flying through him, as fired by some kind of living Picasso painting. You know, Batman always figured he'd die the same way as his parents, shot to death by some random punk in an alley. Of all the possible ways for him to go out, I don't think he quite planned on this. Then again, you have writers like Grant Morrison, who believes Batman plans for every scenario, so it's entirely possible he totally anticipated this. Okay, Robin, in this variation on scenario 46D, a jazz demon will launch shards of glass out of his saxophone at me. Okay, Batman, this is getting ridiculous! Shut up, Robin, this is totally possible! Now, in scenario 47A, a super intelligent emu will use its psychic powers to mind control me. 3 musicians in masks, the brothers of the bop. Masks? I think there's more to them than just masks, dude. One guy has a drum for a torso that shoots out missiles. Suddenly, they're huge. I'm huge. Suddenly, the sax blows glass. A saxophone that doubles as a glass blower? I'll take 50. Glittering in the night like fallen pearls, stained with blood. Shards rip me apart, and I'm a little boy in pain. It's a giant jazz demon shooting out shards of glass from its saxophone that repeatedly stab you. Please do not try to pretend this is anything like when your parents died, you pretentious twit. What am I doing here? That's what I'd like to know. I still can't remember why you actually got involved in this whole thing. We have had basically 0 plot points until the demons showed up. Bluebird quickly makes his escape with 2 of the Brothers of the Bop, I guess that's what we're calling them now, in pursuit. Unfortunately, the Bop brothers feel the need to rhyme everything they say. Gate's gonna skate, lest we set him up straight, with the hip chick called Fate, and don't be late, mate. Going at this rate, I'm put in an emotional state. It's annoying and pointless, so don't try to debate. To be fair, I've done an entire episode of this show in rhyme, but that I at least tried to keep a consistent meter, and I was doing it because it featured the Grinch. I was going for a Dr. Seuss thing. The hell is their excuse? Anyway, back to Batman. He's still in pain.
Because of the glass. No, not glass. Transparent aluminum. Gas. The brothers fired gas. Classical gas.
Batman realizes that it's actually some kind of hallucinogenic gas. You'd think with how many times he encounters this with the Scarecrow that he'd be used to this by now.
There is no glass. There are no wounds. This ain't no disco. This ain't no fooling around. I am no child. I am a man.
Cake batter. Cake batter stops changelings. You would think it would be some sort of magical sort of, hey!
Hell? My Little Pony?
And you, mister, are no giant.
Batman, he is clearly still bigger than you, and even as you punch him, he is still clearly bigger, otherwise it wouldn't look like this. Speaking of the punches, check out the one here where he tells the saxophone playing one to shut up. He actually seems to be arching his entire back so that he's almost upside down. Because sometimes improbable spine contortions aren't just for women in superhero comics. Drum Missile Guy manages to hit Bird with some of the missiles, and it seems Batman's attempt to literally bend over backwards has screwed him over, since the third brother of the Bop whips a cord around his neck and tosses him aside. With Bird seemingly killed, the brothers of the Bop make their exit.
If the truth be death's friend, we the oop bop de booly bop a living end.
Is Death also friends with pointless scatting? Later, Batman has brought Bird to the hospital. He's still alive, just barely, but he's investigating just what the hell happened by calling in a character from last issue, Countess Van Wiesedstein. Much like Bird is based on Charles Parker, the Countess seems to be based on friend and patron of Parker, Baroness Pananika de Koenigswerder, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. The Countess calls this whole thing absurd because no one would wish ill on Bluebird. Batman questions who would want him dead despite, well, you know, her saying just 2 panels ago that nobody would. The world's greatest detective, everyone! He shouldn't have to suffer this second death. He shouldn't have to see the world turn this cruel and cold. Yeah, no one should have to live to see this dreary artwork. Why are you asking me this? Why aren't the police turning this city upside down to find these murderers of art?
Bear in mind that Mr. Bird returned from Europe under an alias, and you and I agreed to preserve that alias to protect him from attackers. I'm telling you something that you already know because the audience didn't see that conversation, and we need to provide exposition. As far as the police know, he's just another homeless old man attacked in a park.
An old black man, you mean? Yeah, because the Gotham City Police, known for their dedication and totally effective law enforcement, would be tearing this city apart, the mayor demanding constant updates on the situation if it had been an old white homeless guy. You ask who would want to kill him? This entire greedy, racist society!
Society itself? So, the Illuminati and their secret lizard replacements. Yes, of course. It all makes perfect sense. Can you be more specific?
His death revealed the ugliness of this country. It was his final artistic statement. Yes, I recall that massive social upheaval that completely revised how people saw the world and the country when Bluebird died in Gotham City. That's why we all listen to bebop and jazz, and there are no wars or traffic accidents, and DC Comics doesn't suck right now. Now even that's been taken from him. He's been brought back from death, made to suffer in anonymity. What the hell are you talking about? He faked his death. Nobody knows he's really alive, and this purported artistic statement of yours is still intact. What are you complaining about? Batman's had enough of her bullcrap and decides to leave, but she suddenly gives him a lead. Dito Bloom, an old songwriter who had stolen music right off of Bird's records and turned it into a hit song. If Bird had lived, he could have sued him for a hell of a lot of money. You know, I think I figured out the real problem with both this comic and Batman Fortunate Son. Namely, they're not Batman stories. Now don't get me wrong, there isn't some set rule that says a Batman story must be something in particular, that it has to fulfill guidelines and follow a specific structure or something. However, the thing about both of these stories is that these are not stories about Batman. When Batman is solving crimes, we're with him and trying to see how he's going to crack the case, learn all the details of the mystery, and see him struggle to bring a wrongdoer to justice. Batman Fortunate Son and Batman Jazz are not about that, though. Both of these comics are about a conflicted musician in it for the art, in one way or another, struggling against people who don't truly care for him or his legacy. Everything is about the musicians, how influential and important they are to rock and roll or jazz, how everybody but them is phony and a lesser person because they don't share his inherent genius or artistic merit. Fortunate Son tries to make it a Batman story by having the conflict with Robin over Batman's hatred of rock and roll, but it's so ridiculous and stupid that they had to force retcons into his backstory to justify it, and even then, you really have to just scratch your head because nothing really changes about Batman in the end of that story. It's still just about how super awesome special Isaac Crow is. And going on these first two issues of Batman Jazz, the same seems to be the case here, but worse. Batman at least had the retcons to try to make it his story in Fortunate Son. Here, he's just investigating an attack on a guy that has more importance placed on him, except of course he's a fictionalization of a real person with attitudes, backstory, and events glamorized to make it more narratively satisfying, as opposed to the sad truth of a very talented, creative man who died tragically young because of irreparable damage to his body from his drug and alcohol abuse. So a lot of it comes off as slightly disrespectful to the real person. This is not like Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, where you take a real person and add in something ridiculous so it becomes parody. This is a dramatic story about a person who is not real, but is based on a real person, who, in a conspiracy theory turn, faked his own death. Unlike the real person who was indeed dead. It's up to you whether you're okay with fictionalized representations of real people and stuff like this, since there are arguments to be made on either side about it, but I don't think it's handled well in this book. Neither of these comics are Batman stories. These are stories where Batman is thrust into events that have nothing to do with him, and we're supposed to care because Batman is there. But really, it's just wish fulfillment fan fiction about dead people. Probably because the writers are really into these musical genres. We will be right back after these messages, so I hope to see you there. Or else. And now we're back. I can't shoot you through the camera. But hey, maybe we can still get at least some decent Batman detective sleuthing out of this if we forget about the constant attempts to convince us how angelic their music is despite, you know, that continuing problem of we can't hear their damn music because this is a comic book and not a CD! Urgh. Anyway, Batman arrives at the penthouse of Dito Bloom, who even has a bunch of goons who work for him who he pays to, by his own admission, beat the crap out of people who give him trouble. Man, don't mess with jazz musicians. They're scarier than the friggin' mob. So now we get to see Batman's detective skills at work. Namely, he flat out asks Bloom if he stole the music, and Bloom admits that he did take it, but he certainly wasn't afraid of being sued, since Bird couldn't afford to pay for a lawyer due to all the money he owed to his drug dealer. Also, the sound a piano makes is tink-a-plink.
Now listen, Seamus.
Seamus? The obscure word for a detective or a private investigator?
Because poor literacy is not present here.
Kudos.
You want criminals? Why don't you go hassle those hip-hop sampler types, taking actual recorded tracks, robbing their own people? Damn kids and their rap music. Back in my day, we stole music legitimately.
And judging from that dialogue, I doubt we'll be seeing Batman hip-hop hero anytime soon from these writers. Bloom suggests some other people that he could go investigate. The many women Bird had affairs with, his drug pushers. Yeah, I'm sure 40 years later the pushers are still holding a grudge over a guy who died without paying his bill. But in particular, he singles out Bird's ex-wife. Batman finds her quickly.
She's still listed as Donna Lee Bird. Widowed 4 decades and no remarriage, no change of name. Bird stays with people. They really need to figure out a life outside of him. It's getting silly at this point.
Batman explains to her that some people attacked a man whom they thought was Bird, and he wants to know who would do something like that. Someone terminally unhip. Someone who doesn't speak in slang. The unhippest of hepcats. When Batman suggests the drug connection, she turns him down. World's most famous junkie. That's what he called himself. But he never burned anyone badly. He wanted to be respected, to be loved. He just hadn't learned how. If only Bird had had access to early 90s educational videos about how drugs aren't cool. You see, Blue never really had a childhood. His parents were murdered by a criminal. One evening, a saxophone flew into his room, and he was inspired to become Saxman. But yeah, now we get a recounting of Bird's early life. Marrying young, living on the wild side for a bit, father dying at a young age. And this seems to be the big difference with the actual Charlie Parker. Mind you, I'm getting this information from Wikipedia, so it could be wrong. Based on that, Charlie Parker had an absent father, but still encouraged him to get into music and was a small-time musician and entertainer himself. Here, the rationalization seems to be that because he lost his father to violence, Bird has an ongoing ache in his heart that he spent his whole life trying to drive away, and that ultimately, even when he was around people, he felt completely alone. Except for music. He gave it everything and it kept him going. Only his obsession could keep the wound from destroying him. And then she turns it around and seems to contradict herself by saying he was a good father who wanted a normal life for his family and enjoyed schmaltzy music, and this doesn't match with the obsession with music that kept his aching heart going and he's alone, poor tortured soul thing. Complex character or inconsistent writing on a guy who faked his own death and made the rest of his loved ones think he was dead. You make the call. When Batman brings up the Countess's theory about the world breaking Bird's spirit, his wife calls it horse crap. She would. All his hangers-on needed him to be the soul of hipness. They didn't even like it when he wanted to study modern music in Europe. If my husband wanted to join the Eurovision contest, then more power to him, I say. Whatever destroyed Blue was his childhood pain and the addiction it left him with. That's all. Although mostly it was the heart attack, I'd say. That probably destroyed him the most. But apparently she decides to flip-flop again, this time waxing poetic about the guy, saying it was a public suicide, that Bird knew the walk in the rain to the Countess's place would kill him, and he wanted to die on his own terms and whatnot. I'm only sorry he had to die in Coco's place and not back home with me. I never even saw the body because she took so long to tell me. Buzzy identified it at the morgue. Do you know the coroner wrote down the wrong name and listed his age at 55 when he was only 35? No one was paying attention. Even in death, he was abandoned. Yeah, about that, I don't know about the wrong name thing, but yes, the coroner for Charlie Parker did misidentify his age. Mainly because Parker's body was so heavily damaged by the drug and alcohol abuse, he looked like a 50 or 60-year-old. The coroner was paying attention. That was part of the problem. The wife says she was never jealous of any of the affairs he had and doesn't know who the hell the Brothers of the Bop are when Batman asks, so his only remaining lead is an old drug connection of Bird's named Cosmic Ray. You know, technically nobody has really been wiped off the suspect list here. What I'm getting from all of this is that all you need to do to throw Batman off the trail is tell a long, boring story about a guy and he'll leave you alone. However, Batman can't locate Cosmic Ray and instead decides to check in on Bird after waxing philosophical again about how everyone seemed to see Bird so differently.
Tortured artist, instinctive demon, good provider, wounded child, pinball wizard. My computers don't help. I went home, played World of Warcraft for 3 hours, and still no closer to the truth.
Batman spots the Brothers of the Bop again as they prepare to attack Bird in the hospital. But this time he's ready, getting the drop on them and equipping himself with a gas mask. And he decks them but good.
I think I hear a jaw break. It's the first sound I've liked coming out of that mouth.
And that sound he liked? WAP, apparently. The saxophone-playing brother tosses an eighth note-shaped grenade into Bird's room from across the street. Damn, he may be a jazz-themed supervillain, but I think he missed out on his true career in baseball. Batman leaps into the window after it.
Bats be nimble, bats be quick.
Bats can't catch our boom boom stick. Okay, I know you were doing it for the rhyme, but that wasn't a stick, moron! Batman grabs the bomb and chucks it back out the window.
Faster than I've ever moved.
Oh, yeah, screw saving Jason Todd before that bomb went off that killed him. No. The fastest you've ever moved is saving the life of a jazz musician who's only in this miniseries. That's the real dramatic weight. The brothers are long gone after the explosion, though, and Batman decides to ask Bird where Cosmic Ray is. He barely manages to get out the word Baird before he's shooed off by the nurse attending to him. After a brief montage of interrogating people who knew Ray Baird, who was apparently in and out of prison, he finds Baird in a rundown apartment.
They call that music. That ain't music. Damn auto-tune. Learn to sing, damn it. In my day, we had some real music. Let me know when Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch are back, dagnabbit. Tell me about the music, Cosmic Ray. Can you score me some tickets to Katy Perry?
So after all of that work to find Cosmic Ray, does this finally give us our answers? Of course not. It's yet another Citizen Kane-esque recounting of Bird, just from Cosmic Ray's perspective. In this case, Bird was a smooth-talking scammer, able to convince anyone to do anything for him, even scoring free drugs from him by creating elaborate webs of deception. However, he really admired Bird and would never do anything to hurt him. What he does tell Batman that gives him a new clue is that Bird owed money to mobsters who had brought drugs into Uptown to begin with, since Bird would get drugs from anybody, and those were the kind of people you didn't piss off. However, this seems to put Batman also on a bit more paranoid road. Thinking back to what Bird said in the first issue about having a new identity lets you leave yourself behind and move on.
Or lets you pull off the ultimate scam. He's gonna pretend to form a boys' marching band in River City.
And so our comic ends at some palatial mansion where Batman knocks out the guards.
If the answers are here, I'm getting them now!
But we aren't, since those answers are apparently in the final issue. This comic, well, it's certainly better than the first issue, but it's still not very good. I can't say for certain if there's more or less pretentiousness in the second issue, since while everyone is still spending every waking moment talking about how awesome Bird is, they at least have multiple different points of view on the guy. Though the wife's views seem to change depending on what page you're on. Sometimes he's just a simple guy trying to provide for his family. Others, he's a tragic junkie with daddy issues. Batman is almost a non-entity. It could be any hard-boiled detective in this role and it wouldn't make a difference. Hell, it'd probably be better for it since we wouldn't have had that ludicrousness of the first issue with Batman showing up in full costume to the jazz club. Here, the ridiculousness is toned back a bit on the Brothers of the Bop, but they're still ludicrous and out of place. Whenever we get to the third issue, maybe it'll actually redeem the whole thing, but chances are they'll say it's about Batman because he has issues with dead parents too. Which, yeah, thanks for that weak bit of symbolism.
Ponies. ponies. Ponies!